Michael Jackson's outfits are decades old, yet they still look newer than what most artists wear today. That's not nostalgia, that's dominance. Think about this for a second. Fashion is supposed to age fast. Trends die, looks expire. What was cool 5 years ago usually looks embarrassing today. But Michael Jackson broke that rule. His jackets, his pants, his shoes, even the way he stood on stage still feel current. You can drop him into today's music industry and nothing about his style would feel outdated. And that shouldn't be possible. This video isn't about copying his clothes or fan worship. It's about understanding why his style refuses to age, why designers still reference him, why artists still borrow from him, and why no one has truly replaced him visually. Michael didn't dress to follow fashion. He dressed to control attention, command space, and create a symbol. Once you see how intentional it was, you'll realize something uncomfortable. Most artists today don't have style. They have costumes. And once you understand that, you'll never look at modern pop stars the same way again. Michael Jackson didn't dress for fashion. He dressed for the camera. Here's the first thing most people miss about Michael Jackson's style. He wasn't dressing for the street. He wasn't dressing for designers. He was dressing for movement, light, and memory. Every piece he wore was chosen with one question in mind. How will this look when I move? The cropped pants weren't a fashion statement. They were there to expose the ankle so every step popped. The white socks weren't random. Under stage lights, they turned footwork into a visual weapon. The loafers weren't casual. They were sleek, silent, and precise, built for control. Even the gloves had a job. One glove, not two. That wasn't vanity, it was balance. One bright focal point so your eyes never wandered when his hands moved. The fedora wasn't just style either. It framed his face, hid his eyes when needed, and made every head tilt feel dramatic. Michael understood something most artists still don't. Style on camera is not about clothes. It's about contrast, motion, and silhouette. That's why his looks still work today. Cameras haven't changed, human attention hasn't changed, and his outfits were engineered to dominate both. But this was just the foundation. Once he mastered how clothes moved, he took things further and turned fashion into identity. He built a uniform, not outfits. Michael Jackson didn't wake up and throw clothes together. He built a uniform, and that's why his style feels timeless instead of trendy. Think about it. Strip away the colors and the eras, and the core stays the same. Structured jackets, sharp shoulders, slim pants, controlled footwear, minimal accessories with maximum impact. That wasn't accidental. A uniform does two things. First, it makes you instantly recognizable. Second, it removes randomness. Michael never wanted people guessing who they were looking at. The second he stepped into frame, you knew it was him. No confusion, no dilution. The military jackets weren't just flashy, they projected authority. The tight silhouettes weren't about sex appeal. They emphasized precision and discipline. Even when the designs changed, the message didn't. Compare that to most artists today. One era, they're streetwear. Next era, they're high fashion. Next era, they're confused. No visual identity, just outfits chasing trends. Michael locked his identity early and refined it over decades. That's why his style doesn't feel stuck in the past. It feels consistent. And once you understand that, the next layer hits even harder because his clothes weren't just about identity. They were about power. Military jackets, royal energy, and controlled power. This is where Michael Jackson's style stops being about fashion and starts becoming psychological. Those military jackets were never just decorative or flashy, they were tools. Sharp shoulders, heavy buttons, gold details, rigid structure. The moment he stepped on stage wearing them, he didn't look like a pop singer waiting to entertain. He looked like someone in command. And that feeling wasn't accidental. Military clothing triggers something deep in the human brain. Discipline, authority, leadership. Michael understood that without even realizing it. He wasn't copying officers or uniforms because they looked cool. He was borrowing the visual language of power and reshaping it into performance. What always stood out to me is that he never wore these jackets casually. They were reserved for moments of impact. Watch his entrances, the silence, the stillness, the way he stands before the music even starts. The clothing boosts that pause. It makes the moment feel heavier, more serious, almost ceremonial. That's where the royal energy comes in. He fused military structure with regal symbolism, gold embroidery, epaulets, medals that didn't represent rank or achievement, but status. Not status in a financial sense, but presence. He wasn't asking for attention. He was commanding it. And that's why these looks still don't feel dated. Power doesn't age. Authority doesn't expire. The same reason tailored suits still work today is the same reason Michael's jackets still work. They tap into something timeless. When you compare that to most modern artists, the difference is obvious. Many dress to look expensive or trendy. Michael dressed to look untouchable. And once you see that, you realize his style was never about flexing wealth or chasing designers. It was about control. Minimalism disguised as extravagance. Here's the part that surprises most people once they really pay attention. Michael Jackson's style looks extravagant, but it was actually built on serious self-control. He didn't rotate endless outfits or chase every new trend. He reused the same core pieces again and again, just refined them. One glove, one fedora, slim pants, short hems, structured jackets. That's it. The illusion of excess came from precision, not volume. He understood that repetition creates identity. When people saw those elements repeatedly, they stopped seeing clothes and started seeing a symbol. And that's something most artists today completely miss. They confuse variety with creativity. Michael knew that too much variety weakens the image. What made his looks feel luxurious wasn't how much he added, but how little he changed. Even the sparkle was controlled. The crystals were placed to catch light at specific moments. The gold wasn't everywhere. It was concentrated. Nothing was random and nothing was cluttered. When I look back now, it almost feels like he was editing his wardrobe the way a filmmaker edits scenes, cutting anything that didn't serve the message. That's why his outfits don't feel chaotic or noisy decades later. Fashion that served performance, not ego. This is where Michael Jackson separates himself from almost everyone who came after him. His clothes were never about showing off. They were about function. Every outfit had one main job: help him perform better. Nothing restricted his movement. Nothing slowed him down. The tight pants allowed clean leg lines. The lightweight jackets moved with his body instead of fighting it. Even when the outfits looked heavy or detailed, they were designed so he could breathe, spin, freeze, and explode into motion without resistance. That's rare. Most artists today dress for photos, not for movement. Michael dressed for the moment, when the beat dropped and the crowd lost control. You can see it clearly in his performances. When he hits a pose, the clothes sharpen it. When he moves fast, they don't distract, they enhance. That's not accident, that's discipline. I always think about how much restraint that takes. Imagine having the power to wear anything you want and still choosing clothes that serve the performance first. No oversized nonsense, no clutter, no ego-driven pieces that steal focus. Everything pointed back to the music and the movement. That's why his style still feels alive on stage even today. Why modern artists still borrow his look. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Modern artists don't reference Michael Jackson because it's nostalgic. They do it because his visual formula still works. When someone wears a military jacket, a fedora, cropped pants, or sharp black and white styling on stage today, it's not an accident. They're borrowing a language Michael already proved was powerful. He solved the problem of how to look iconic on camera, on stage, and in memory. Most artists now are stuck reacting to trends. Michael created a blueprint: strong silhouette, clear symbols, controlled movement, high contrast. That formula still dominates live performances, award shows, and music videos, whether people admit it or not. I notice this every time a modern artist tries to have a moment. The moment always looks familiar. That's because when pressure is high and expectations are big, people fall back on what they know works. And Michael's style works because it's not fragile. It doesn't depend on trends, filters, or hype cycles. It depends on fundamentals: presence, precision, identity. That's why even when artists try to avoid looking like him, they still end up echoing him. His influence isn't loud anymore. It's built into the system. And once you see that, you realize something important. Michael didn't just inspire fashion. He set the standard most artists are still chasing. Why no one has replaced him visually. This is the part most people don't want to admit. Michael Jackson hasn't been visually replaced because the industry no longer creates artists like him. Today's system rewards speed, volume, and safety. Trends change every few months, social media resets attention every few seconds, and artists are pushed to constantly reinvent instead of refine. Michael came up in a time where image was built slowly and deliberately. He had the space to lock into a visual identity and sharpen it for years. That kind of patience doesn't exist anymore. And beyond that, there's risk. Michael wasn't afraid to commit fully to a look, even if it made people uncomfortable at first. The glove, the jackets, the silhouettes. He didn't test them online. He didn't soften them for approval. He walked out and owned them. Most artists today hedge. They mix styles. They play it safe. They try to appeal to everyone. Michael did the opposite. He narrowed his image until it became unavoidable. That's why his style still feels powerful. It wasn't designed to trend. It was designed to last. And until the industry allows artists to slow down, take risks, and build something singular again, there won't be another Michael Jackson visually. Not because he was perfect, but because he was intentional in a way the modern system doesn't support anymore. Michael Jackson's style still looks modern because it was never built on trends. It was built on intention. Every jacket, every glove, every detail had a purpose: to control attention, enhance movement, and create identity. He didn't chase fashion. He shaped it around performance and presence. That's why his look hasn't aged while so many others have. The real takeaway isn't to copy what he wore, but to understand how seriously he treated image. Style that comes from clarity lasts. Style that comes from trends fades. Michael chose clarity, and that's why his visual legacy still stands untouched.